Failyloom friends, welcome to Bramble. We here at the recording studio, along with Molly, my producer, are in a bit of a pickle in so much as our entire planet has become an inferno. Yes, where we live, all is on fire, all is smoke. Little Molly is not taking it well, and we will try to be succinct with our commentary on episode 15929 of Love Among the Brambles, Not Quite Right. I do not see that we have the copy for the sponsor, but I will tell you now, we are to be sponsored by the Personality Pill. Are you, like legendary Peyton Drake, as memorable as parsley garnish? Are you overlooked, undervalued, or altogether disregarded? Then the Personality Pill is for you. This peppy paisley tablet will not only give you personality, it may even give you friends. That's all I see. The copy was not finished, but I believe we get the gist. Let us move on now. This will be the last episode before 2 Holyloom episodes. And in today's episode, we hear that Raffia is looking for answers about how the curse was lifted on the Fawn Witch. As you recall, Viola was instrumental in making that happen. And then the Fawn Witch came to the Granamas Ball and cursed everyone, froze them. Dodd Hoskins to the rescue, warmed them all with his human heat. But Raffia is determined to get to the bottom of how the Fawn Witch's curse was lifted. Of course, that does not bode well for our Viola. Calla Lily, sister to Viola. Calla Lily, the empath who works at Ivy Glen Spa, goes to pay a social call to Nanny, her grandmother, Pearl Nanny Nettlebottom. Slate, brother to the Bramble children, goes back to City Hall to inquire about work. In earlier episodes, we recall that his unfortunate union with his wife, Dahlia the Dalliance, and her mother, Lena, they had pressured him into getting a job, into earning an income, with the idea that they would then participate in the family funding by spending that income. But of his own volition, Slate has gone back to Seeley Hall to inquire about work. Good for Slate. We recall that Citron, youngest of the Bramble children, the proverbial baby of the family, we know that she had spent much of her life making decisions based on her beau du jour, and now she has realized she has something to offer in the way of public relations, and she is looking for a career. Except the fly in the ointment, so to speak, the bee in the buttercup, is Jeffrin the elf, who is her match in so many ways. The timing of him coming into her life is not primo in so much as she has sworn off men, but she's not able to get rid of him that quickly, as we know. He came back, he was at the ball, he applied for a job at City Hall, at Seeley Hall, I keep saying that incorrectly, to be a staff photographer. He's not giving up on Citron. As we know in last week's episode, she and Magnolia had a long overdue outing together, the two friends back together at last. And as we know, they ate some questionable mushrooms, even though they are fae and should be able to tell in their sleep which mushrooms to ingest and which not. And yet, this week we have the results of that bad decision-making. And if you ask me, this was all done as a setup for this week's episode, in which Magnolia and Citron, while incapacitated on those mushrooms, were robbed. Brigands robbed them. And if you ask me, that is what they get, not knowing the difference between those mushrooms. Nanny, Pearl Nettlebottom, is thrilled to have her sweetest and most vulnerable grandchild, Calla Lily, come to pay a visit. Stock, who, as we know, finally shared a kiss with Viola after centuries of waiting, he has done something incredibly chivalrous. He has rebuilt Viola's apothecary that, as we know, I think 2 seasons ago, was destroyed. Was that by Magnolia? At the time, Viola assumed it was Stock who had done it, very cruelly assuming that. Stock would never do such a thing. And she accused him of as much, and that put a wrench in their friendship. But Stock, ever the bigger man, the bigger fae, as a goodwill gesture for the woman he's loved for so long, builds a new apothecary for her, for the healer's cottage. I mentioned Slate goes to Seeley Hall to apply for a job. While he is there, Brooke comes in and applies for the same job, unbeknownst to either of them. Apparently, on their day out together, the Friends' Day that they enjoyed last episode, what Slate said about his intentions to seek employment so inspired Brooke he did the same. How this will pan out is anyone's guess. Moving on to Milliam, Old Mill, now husband to Nanny Nettlebottom. He, as we know, had been losing his memory, and as such, he drinks forget-me-not tea in an effort to remember more, to remember who he is, or who anyone is for that matter. Unfortunately, it did not work. He had an allergic reaction, which exacerbated, is that the right term? It is now, his condition, and he is remembering less and less. Very sad to see in an older gentleman. I mentioned earlier that Raffia was keen to learn how the Fawn Witch's curse was lifted, and if it involved anyone else, who did the lifting? Over the course of this episode, 15929, Not Quite Right, he learns it is Viola who helped the Fawn Witch overcome her curse, making it possible for her to no longer be a fawn, but a woman, a human, in all her glorious, terrible form. And as such, Raffia renews his pledge to see the Brambles ruined. It's just more than one can take. And now, a leaf blower. Not certain if you can hear that. Certainly that is not of the well, there we go. That sound is not something sanctioned or caused by the Fae. Last we go to Dodd Hoskins. He begins his Fae training by having a long talk and walk with Nanny regarding his history, Fae history, the history of the ring, and so on. All in all, a solid episode. We've mentioned our sponsor already, and now we move on to calls after this episode that got a 4 mushroom rating. What have you to say, caller number 1?
I'm all for Slate making something of himself and getting a career, but I really wish he'd handle the Dahlia and Lena situation first. The minute they find out he has a paying job, good luck getting them out. They'll never leave. And I really don't want Lena around any longer. Who knows what trouble she and Prince Raffia are cooking up together. Sheesh.
I understand what you are saying about Slate waiting to begin a career until he had dispensed with Dahlia and Lena. But there seems to have been webs to untangle in his pursuit of marital dissolution, and I, for one, applaud the fact that he has shown some ambition, some gumption. However, that said, I do agree with you that if he gets this job, it will be impossible to get rid of them. So it would be best if he was not hired until after these two hangers-on are gone. I further agree with you that no good can come of the friendship collaboration between Lena and Raffia. I think there is much more to her than we know. Moving on to caller number 2.
Citron and Magnolia got robbed after passing out on mythic mushrooms. Ha! That's just what they deserve. I know this was brought up last week, but really, what self-respecting Fae can't tell the difference between mushrooms? If you ask me, it was just a setup by the writers so the girls could get robbed. And I, for one, like it. What a hoot!
I could not have said it better, caller. I do think this was a plot device last week, but it is one of those jumping the shark, nuclear refrigerator situations that causes one to roll one's eyes and mutter things like, "Oh, brother," that sort of thing. I'm glad you did like it. It was a hoot, so I'm glad you were able to see past the gimmickry of it all. Now, moving on to our final caller, caller number 3.
I was really worried about Slate and Brook applying for the same job. Their friendship's been on thin ice for a while now, and this could send it over the edge. Fortunately, the scene after Milliam and the forget-me-not tea made me, well, forget all about Slate and Brook. The scene with Milliam was hilarious, and the way Nanny tried to reenact Milliam's life events to help him remember, priceless. Leave it to Nanny to leave us smiling.
I, too, am concerned. I don't know to what degree about Slate and Brook both going after the same job. It just depends how serious they both are about employment. If one doesn't really care, then I don't think it'll have much bearing, but this could go either way, certainly. As for Nanny, oh yes, the scene at the very end as the credits rolled, when they showed a Nanny reenacting the life events for Milliam. Is there nothing that actress can't do? Pathos, comedy, a true professional. I enjoyed that very much as well, and I was smiling, as you say. To wrap up, next we have episode 15930 entitled, What Now? In that episode, Callie returns to work, Citron, Slate, Brook, and Magnolia share an outing, and perhaps most portentous, Rosie, the Katie Diddleleaf, returns to Stock's home when Viola is visiting. Rosie Katie Diddleleaf, in whose thrall Stock had been trapped for so long, returns. What might this mean for Viola and Stock, who finally have a chance at happiness together? I suppose we'll have to find out next, Plulum, in episode 15930, What Now? Until then, friends, keep calm, bramble on, stay safe, and if your planet is on fire, seek Aquas. Aquas heals all. Tuta.